Ambassador Thessara stopped dead in the customs line. Her crystalline body flickering wildly. Had never seen a soul glow like that human officer's. Daniel Hayes stood at his post as usual, scanning badges and ID without much thought. A routine day, just another shift in the bustling trading post of Vega IV. Suddenly, something caught his eye. A tall figure paused mid-step, her entire body shimmering with an unusual energy. "Ma'am," Daniel called out automatically, though he couldn't put a finger on what was wrong. Thessara vel'Vorn's crystalline skin flashed erratically as she stared at him in shock. Her eyes were wide and disbelieving, reflecting the confusion of other beings lining up behind her. They whispered among themselves with looks that said, "Is something wrong?" "Excuse me." Another officer approached Daniel's station hesitantly. "Should I assist Ambassador Vornathi? She seems distracted." Daniel blinked, turning back to Thessara, who was still rooted in place, gazing at him with an intensity he had never experienced before. "I'm fine," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. Her fingers twitched nervously against the translucent surface of her skin. Just surprised. A smile tugged at Daniel's lips as naturally as breathing. It was his usual reaction to keep things light and reassuring under pressure. But when he looked back up from signing off on Thessara's ID, something unexpected happened. Thessara gasped lightly, as if struck by a sudden wave of sensation, her eyes flickering with an internal glow that mirrored the swirls of gold and rose within his aurate colors, so vivid they seemed to burn into her mind's eye. Her crystalline body began to sway uncontrollably until Daniel reacted instinctively. "Ma'am!" He reached out and caught Thessara by the arm, steadying her with surprising strength for someone who considered himself just a regular Joe on patrol duty. "Are you okay?" His touch was firm yet gently, a human's simple gesture meant to offer support. But for Thessara vel'Vorn, it felt like an electric current sparking through every fiber of her being. The connection between them intensified the colors in his aura she had seen earlier, now alive and vivid right before her eyes. It filled her heart with a warmth unlike anything she'd ever experienced. She managed to steady herself momentarily against Daniel's support, but struggled for words beyond that singular gasp. "I'm fine," she repeated more strongly this time, though it didn't feel true at all. Daniel's smile grew as he released his grip gently, still looking concerned yet trying not to draw unnecessary attention or cause a scene in front of the customs line. He knew these protocols better than most. There was no need for fuss unless needed, but Thessara felt that she needed him close just one more moment longer before moving on. His eyes were warm and honest as they looked up into hers once again, holding her gaze with an unwavering sincerity that spoke volumes without saying a word. "Just take your time," he murmured kindly. Then, almost as if reading the unspoken plea in Thessara's shimmering form, "Would you like me to escort you personally?" Thessara's breath caught at his offer. It was both unexpected and deeply comforting, all wrapped into one moment. Her crystalline skin flickered wildly once more under their shared gaze before she nodded slowly. "Yes." Her voice came out barely above a murmur, yet filled with undeniable gratitude. Daniel offered Thessara an arm, as escorting protocol dictated for high-ranking officials such as herself. It was a formal gesture here at the trading post, but it felt far from routine or customary now. Walking beside him through those bustling halls and corridors of Vega IV, her steps seemed to synchronize perfectly with his own measured pace. "I'm glad you stopped by today," Daniel said softly, after a moment's comfortable silence between them. "It was nice meeting you." The words meant nothing extraordinary in the context of their duty-bound interaction, but Thessara's heart fluttered at his sincerity and kindness. Every step closer to her quarters felt both an escape from this overwhelming moment yet simultaneously a yearning to prolong it. "Thank you," she whispered back genuinely, as they neared the exit for her residence area within the station. Thessara watched Daniel wave goodbye with that same easy smile of his, so effortlessly charming and utterly disarming. As he turned away, heading back towards his post amidst the bustle, Thessara's heart raced faster in a way she couldn't explain nor understand, yet desperately wanted to know more about. She continued her journey, alone from there on out, but the warmth lingering between them seemed impossible not to follow along with every step. Her quarters lay ahead now, time for reflection and recalibration awaited her. Yet even as she walked into solitude, all Thessara could think of was Daniel Hayes, and how desperately she needed another glimpse at those mesmerizing soul colors again someday soon. And so ended their first encounter, officially concluded, but far from forgotten by either party involved in this interstellar whirlwind beginning to unravel with unexpected fervor. Thessara vel'Vorn stood at her desk, reviewing security protocols for a routine escort mission to one of Vega IV bustling marketplaces. But there was no routine when it came to this particular human officer, Daniel Hayes, whose presence had left an indelible imprint on her crystalline being just moments before. She cleared her throat softly and pressed the intercom button. "Security operations, please send Officer Daniel Hayes here," she commanded with a precision that masked any hint of inner turmoil. The response came back quickly over the station's calm network, a standard acknowledgement followed by an unexpected query about her preference for security detail on such mundane tasks. Thessara sighed internally, but maintained composure in her reply. "I request him specifically, please." As the intercom clicked off with another terse confirmation, Thessara's hand hovered near a potted plant shed brought from home to remind herself of simpler times before galactic diplomacy became an endless stream of meetings and negotiations. Her inner light flickered more rapidly than usual in response to Daniel's memory still so vividly imprinted on her mind. "Mom," came the voice through the speaker, interrupting any further daydreams. "Officer Hayes is here." She straightened immediately at his approach, more composed now, but perhaps less professional, since she could feel her heart racing with anticipation rather than duty-bound routine. Thessara turned to face Daniel as he entered her quarters. "Good afternoon, officer," she greeted formally yet warmly despite their earlier encounter's somewhat chaotic start. "I hope you didn't mind the request." Daniel nodded politely, though his expression held a hint of confusion mixed with curiosity, a combination that intrigued Thessara more than any logical argument could ever achieve. "No, ma'am," he replied evenly. "Just not used to being requested for an escort duty like this." She smiled gently in response, trying her best to maintain professionalism while feeling utterly overwhelmed by the allure of Daniel's presence. "I appreciate your time and attention," she continued smoothly. Thessara led them into a more private area where she could continue their conversation without fear of prying ears or eyes, though on Vega IV such worries were usually minimal thanks to strict privacy protocols for diplomats' quarters. There, they sat down opposite each other at her desk, the air between them thick with unspoken questions and burgeoning fascination. "I wanted to discuss certain security measures we might implement here," Thessara began diplomatically, but found herself unable to fully focus on that topic once Daniel's soul colors came into full view. Again, warm gold intertwined seamlessly with deep rose hues, radiating an aura of love and courage. It was unexpected How moved I felt by your presence earlier." Daniel blinked a few times before his warm brown eyes softened further under her gaze. "Pretty ordinary," he mumbled almost to himself. Thessara couldn't help but laugh, a sound like crystal chiming in the stillness of their shared space. "You have no idea," she murmured, leaning back slightly, as if gaining distance might somehow shield herself from the intensity radiating between them both. His eyes widened ever so slightly at her admission, though his expression didn't change much beyond that brief moment. Thessara observed him closely now, fascinated not just by how beautiful Daniel's aura was, but also intrigued by each subtle shift of emotion or thought visible through those soul colors. "In 300 years," she started slowly, after regaining some semblance of control over her voice and composure alike, "I've never seen gold and rose together like this." Daniel flushed slightly at the praise, embarrassment coloring his features further, but it only served to intensify that glow around him, making Thessara's breath catch in a way she'd thought impossible before their encounter. "Your people call them love and courage," she continued softly, "and you radiate both." His discomfort grew visibly then, but oddly enough, there was something undeniably captivating about his awkwardness. To every flicker of hesitation or uncertainty added to the already profound impression Thessara had made upon him. Yet here he sat, trying desperately not to let it show. "I don't know what you're talking about," Daniel said finally with a self-deprecating grin. "But if you ever need another escort through customs again, it'll be there." Thessara's heart glowed brighter at his words, even as she nodded appreciatively towards him. She knew that it was merely business for Officer Hayes, but to her soul and crystalline senses alike this interaction held significance far beyond routine protocol. "Thank you," she whispered back genuinely. Once more, feeling the warmth of those golden and rose hues linger long after they faded from sight again, amidst other station duties demanding their attention elsewhere today. As Daniel stood up politely to take his leave, Thessara found herself admiring him one last time before he disappeared down the hall. In that moment, she admitted something crucial to her own mind, something she refused to voice out loud yet felt true even as it startled her. She was developing feelings for this random human. It didn't make sense by any logical measure or cosmic law, but Thessara couldn't deny how deeply moved and fascinated Daniel had left her feeling. And so ended their second encounter, an author officially concluded meeting that would linger far longer within both of them than the mere minutes they spent together ever could explain away with simple words alone. Chapter 3. The attack. Officer Daniel Hayes stood beside Ambassador Thessara vel'Vorn, his hand resting lightly on her elbow as they walked down the bustling promenade of the multi-species trading post. Despite the constant hum of alien languages and the jangle of various species passing by, each with their own distinct mannerisms and attire, the pair moved calmly through the crowd. "Careful," Thessara murmured, her voice like a gentle wind chime as she noticed Daniel's gaze drifting to every direction but the path in front of them. "Traders often make sudden bargains here." Daniel nodded, his warm brown eyes meeting hers for just an instant before he returned to scanning their surroundings. His presence was soothing. There wasn't anything particularly remarkable about him other than a strong jawline, an easy smile that seemed half concealed by self-deprecation. "I'm not usually one for the promenade," Daniel admitted quietly, his voice rough but sincere. "Just do my job mostly." Thessara couldn't help smiling softly. "It's quite different from your usual duties," she agreed, her eyes reflecting a kaleidoscope of starlight as they turned their heads to greet some passing traders. But suddenly the calm atmosphere shattered when Trade Baron Krex's thugs emerged from the shadows, a group of 7 burly aliens with an air of menace about them. They surrounded Daniel and Thessara swiftly, blocking all exits. The leader sneered at Thessara before turning his gaze to Daniel. "Get her," he ordered coarsely, in a mix of languages common among intergalactic criminals. Daniel's muscles tensed instantly as the thugs lunged forward. Instinctively, his hand tightened on Thessara's elbow protectively. "Stay behind me," he growled without breaking eye contact with their attackers, already moving to intercept them between her and danger. Thessara watched in astonishment as Daniel charged at the thugs despite being no match for any of Krex's goons physically. His aura flared brilliantly, protective gold blazed fiercely around him, while a deep rose hue swirled within, signifying an intense inner courage that amazed even her trained senses. The fight was brutal and swift. 2 thugs slammed into Daniel at once as he tried to reach Thessara first. A sickening crunch echoed when one of them struck his ribcage brutally with their thick fists before another followed suit, shoving him roughly toward the ground. But despite the pain evident in every movement now, Daniel's face remained resolute and determined, fought back desperately, even though he was clearly outmatched. Thessara felt a surge of anger as she saw this. Her crystalline fingers snapped into action, instantly creating barriers to shield Daniel from further harm, while retaliating against their attackers with icy precision. But it wasn't just Thessara's strength that held them off. It was the sheer force of Daniel's will and bravery that pushed her past any reservations about using lethal force too soon. "Get away," she barked, pushing Daniel behind one such barrier as he stumbled dazedly against it from a particularly vicious punch. His aura flickered violently in response to each hit, but remained steadfast around him like an unyielding shield of determination and courage. "We don't want you dead," the leader growled menacingly at Thessara over his henchman's roars of exertion. "We just need that Vornathi gold for a little while." Thessara glared back defiantly, but found her gaze returning to Daniel almost against her will, was limping slightly now from where one thug had managed to land several kicks on him despite Thessara's efforts. His breathing was ragged as he picked himself up again and lunged forward once more, taking a hit meant for her. "Not the way I see it," Daniel gritted out between clenched teeth before delivering another hard blow against one of Krex's men with renewed vigor that shocked even Thessara into admiration. She felt herself beginning to understand just how much this human ordinary, as he claimed himself to be, beyond mere biological interaction or diplomatic protocol. The thugs were slowing down now, clearly not expecting such a fear. See resistance from someone so apparently outmatched. With one final burst of coordinated effort by Thessara and Daniel working together seamlessly despite neither having planned for this scenario beforehand at all, they managed to take them down almost completely before any further harm could come either's way. Daniel was bleeding heavily, but still standing firmly over the fallen thugs when he turned back towards where Thessara had retreated behind another barrier. A wide grin spread across his face, bloodied and grimy though it may have been. "We did it," Daniel panted out with an unmistakable note of triumph in his voice despite being obviously hurt worse than he was letting on to her through words alone right now. Thessara nodded once before pulling him gently back towards a nearby emergency exit door labeled safe room. The moment they pushed inside together, Thessara quickly sealed it shut with crystalline barriers and flicked on the small medical kit stationed in the corner of this designated safe haven within station protocol designations. "Can you stand?" she asked urgently, as Daniel slid to sit down heavily against one wall. His breathing was shallower now but more controlled compared just moments ago back out there among their attackers, and yet it still didn't hide how badly battered he must be inside right then and there. Daniel forced himself up with a nod. Sure. He wobbled slightly on his feet as Thessara moved to start applying bandages over various bruises and cuts now dotting him from head to toe. "Y'all need more than that," she said grimly, after carefully examining some of the worst hits had taken. One particularly nasty bruise blooming near Daniel's ribcage, where it looked like one thug had landed a solid hit right before Thessara could get there to shield him properly from harm. "I've seen worse bruises on my best friend back home," Daniel shrugged off lightly despite wincing sharply as she dabbed antiseptic onto particularly nasty scrapes across his face. "Nothing that needs stitches or anything serious." Thessara's heart glowed brighter with pride and affection toward this human who had just risked everything to protect her from danger, though of course Daniel remained oblivious about the intensity visible in every action Thessara took as she tended him now back within these locked confines together. "Not exactly my first date," he joked softly through gritted teeth while wincing at each new application of medicine on his injuries, "but definitely memorable." Thessara froze mid-motion, her crystalline fingers hovering over another scrape near Daniel's shoulder, a momentary flicker of realization passing through her eyes as she met Daniel's gaze directly now for the first time since they'd ended up trapped here together amidst this chaos. "Did you just—" Her voice trailed off in disbelief. Daniel blinked back, his warm brown eyes softening ever so slightly beneath hers despite how pained he looked from all those injuries sustained protecting her out there amidst battle against Crex's men not too long ago anymore now. "What? Oh right." Daniel chuckled softly through a grimace. "Guess it kinda was an unexpected turn of events to say the least." Thessara's heart raced, had no idea why this moment felt so significant beyond just their shared survival story out there amidst chaos and danger back in that promenade hallway earlier today. "Thank you," she whispered softly then, her voice barely audible over the quiet hum around them inside the safe room confines now where they were locked together, still reeling from all recent events outside amongst those attackers before this point. She leaned forward slightly to press a gentle hand against his cheek in silent gratitude for what he had done. "I couldn't have made it without you," Daniel said sincerely back at her, meeting Thessara's crystalline gaze with open sincerity of emotion now visible through every flicker and shift within those warm brown eyes too. "And I probably would've tried anyway." Thessara found herself smiling softly, then understanding more clearly in this moment exactly why she had been so moved by Daniel's presence earlier today amidst all these interactions leading up to recent events. "Indeed," Thessara murmured back warmly, feeling her heart glow brighter still with every glance shared between them now locked inside together amidst aftermath of battle before. And thus ended Chapter 3, this critical moment of truth and bravery unfolding amidst chaos that left both Officer Daniel Hayes and Ambassador Thessara vel'Vorn far more connected beyond mere diplomatic encounters than either could have ever anticipated beforehand. The air inside the safe room was thick and tense, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just been outside its sealed doors. Daniel leaned against one wall, his eyes focused on Thessara as she moved about the small space, gathering supplies for their anticipated wait until rescue arrived. "Your aura is beautiful," Thessara said suddenly, her voice soft but filled with an unusual intensity. She paused in her movements and turned to face him fully, her crystalline form glowing softly under the dim light of the room. Daniel blinked, taken aback by her statement. "My what?" he asked, his brow furrowing slightly as confusion clouded his features. Thessara took a step closer, her translucent skin shimmering faintly in the low light. "Your aura," she repeated gently. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Daniel's eyes widened as realization began to dawn on him. He had heard of different species having unique physiological traits, auras being one such phenomenon among certain races, but he never imagined someone would think his own was noteworthy enough for comment. Daniel stammered, unsure how to respond to this unexpected revelation about himself and her apparent admiration. "You can see that?" Thessara nodded slowly, the inner light in her crystalline form brightening slightly as she gazed at him with a deep sincerity rare even among her kind, known for their diplomatic reserve. "I am one of few who can," she explained softly. "Your aura, its warm gold and rose-colored shadows swirling within layers that seem to reflect depths I've never encountered before." Daniel blinked again, his expression shifting from confusion to something akin to self-deprecation as he glanced away momentarily. "Look," he said with a sigh, rubbing the back of his neck where Thessara had applied an antiseptic earlier. "I'm divorced. Work security at a trading post. Eat frozen dinners by myself watching old movies every night." Thessara's eyes widened in disbelief, her body language shifting as she took a step towards him, her hand reaching out to gently place itself on his cheek. Her translucent fingers felt cool against his skin, but it was comforting nonetheless. "Your wife was foolish," Thessara stated firmly yet tenderly. "To miss the warmth and light within you is tragic." She paused for a moment, letting that sink in before continuing. "And your job isn't just work. You protect lives every day." Daniel looked at her then, truly seeing the sincerity reflected back from those crystalline depths. A rare smile tugged at his lips as he nodded slightly. Thessara's heart glowed brighter still within her crystal form, the light within amplifying as she continued earnestly. "Your soul, your very essence, is more radiant and profound than anything I've witnessed among countless beings, emperors, heroes, saints. The pale in comparison to you." Daniel blinked rapidly at that, not entirely sure what to make of such high praise coming from an alien diplomat used to interacting with the elite across galaxies. He laughed softly despite himself before shaking his head slightly. "I don't think him all that special," he admitted ruefully, after a moment's silence, glancing away as if embarrassed by her words. "Just average." Thessara gently cupped both sides of Daniel's face, then with her cool crystal hands, forcing him to look back at her once more. Her voice was soft yet determined when she spoke again. "Daniel," Thessara murmured tenderly, her eyes reflecting a starlit sky within their crystalline depths as they locked gazes intensely now without hesitation or fear of judgment from either side. "You are far from ordinary." She watched his expression shift slightly under the sincerity and intensity of that look, seeing something almost akin to awe in those warm brown eyes staring back at her now. "You have protected me," she whispered softly, but with conviction as tears began forming within her crystalline structure. "A rarity among Vornathi, unless deeply moved. Against dangers I didn't even know existed, yet you still risked your life without hesitation." Daniel stared into Thessara's crystal gaze, feeling a warmth spreading through him despite the chill of her fingertips against his skin. "You don't need to do this," Daniel finally managed, voice low and gentle in return, attempting to offer reassurance rather than push her away. "Really appreciate it though." Thessara shook her head slowly, tears now beginning to roll down her translucent cheeks like delicate crystalline streams. "You deserve far better understanding of who you are," she insisted softly but with conviction before leaning forward slightly. And then in that moment of intense connection between Thema, mutual silence, where words failed, both Daniel found himself drawn towards Thessara as well, closing the small remaining distance between their faces and pressing his lips gently against hers. It was a tender touch meant more to convey comfort than passion at first, but it brought an immediate reaction from her side. Her entire form lit up like a beacon in response to that kiss, crystalline body glowing brightly around them as if absorbing some profound truth through physical contact alone. Daniel pulled back slightly, meeting Thessara's wide eyes with a mix of confusion and wonder on his own face. "What just happened?" he asked, quietly but almost reverently. Thessara was trembling lightly now, her entire being alight in an unusual manner that left her breathless for the first time ever regarding any form of contact or interaction from another species. It was clear she had never experienced such a reaction before, not even close to what Daniel's mere touch and kiss brought out within herself. I've been alive for centuries," Thessara whispered softly, almost in awe, as her eyes shimmered with reflected starlight and tears now freely flowing down her translucent skin. "Never felt anything like this looking at you." Daniel simply stared back into those crystalline depths where he could see the stars swirling within them, seeing true beauty reflecting his soul's essence there rather than just physical allure of another species. And so their moment ended as it began, with Thessara glowing brightly now under her unusual reaction, while Daniel remained rooted to the spot, both silently acknowledging a newfound connection forged in shared adversity. Amidst this chaotic universe, the emergency lights flickered overhead as station security rushed into the safe room, their blasters at the ready despite there being no immediate threat visible anymore. Krex's thugs were apprehended without incident, the chaos quickly dissipating under professional intervention. Yet, amidst all this, Daniel's attention was drawn to Thessara, who stood near him, her form tense and alert, even as she watched over him protectively. "Daniel," a nurse called urgently from behind them, "we need to take you to medical right away." She had observed his injuries worsening despite his insistence on staying with the ambassador during their ordeal. Daniel nodded stiffly, wincing slightly but determined not to show weakness in front of Thessara or anyone else. "We should go," he said quietly, looking at her beseechingly, as though seeking some silent permission before submitting himself for medical attention. Thessara watched him closely as the nurse and another security officer assisted Daniel out of his seat. She stepped forward hesitantly, but found herself unable to leave until she ensured that someone else would watch over him in her stead. "I will ensure you receive proper care," Thessara said firmly, turning towards one of her aides who had accompanied her on this mission. The aide's face showed a mix of worry and confusion when he saw the Vornathi ambassador speaking so seriously about Daniel's well-being. "Of course, Lady vel'Vorn," she replied with an uneasy nod before rushing off to arrange for him to be taken care of immediately. "Please stay here until I am settled in medical," Daniel murmured as his companions left them behind once more. He paused briefly when their eyes met again, warmth spreading across Thessara's crystalline face, as if recognizing the unspoken gratitude and worry mirrored there too deeply understood between two souls bound by recent trials together. "I will stay," she promised softly, but with absolute certainty in her tone. Daniel nodded his thanks before allowing himself to be guided towards medical bay. The journey felt like a long drag through cold corridors under dim emergency lighting, punctuated only by the occasional reassuring touch from Thessara or whispered words of encouragement that somehow made everything feel just a little bit better despite their dire circumstances. Once inside the bright, sterile room where medics swarmed around him with equipment and diagnostic tools, Daniel found himself momentarily alone as they prepared for an examination. He sat up straighter on the table, then winced again, feeling bruises and bone fractures begin to speak more loudly now that adrenaline had waned somewhat after rescue operations concluded successfully earlier. A sharp pain shot through his midsection when he moved suddenly under their careful scrutiny, making him gasp involuntarily at what felt like far worse injuries than previously apparent. Thessara watched from her position nearby with a growing sense of unease, seeing the visible discomfort on Daniel's face, knowing that even though she had seen humans many times before in diplomatic visits and trade missions, none had ever affected her this deeply. As medics worked diligently to assess his condition more thoroughly now with their advanced scanners, Thessara hovered anxiously close by, observing everything without interfering while still maintaining a reassuring presence nearby. Her aides were visibly scandalized at the sight of such intense scrutiny being placed upon Daniel, but said nothing when they saw how focused she remained solely on ensuring he received proper medical care rather than worrying about protocol or hierarchy. "Ribs cracked," one doctor announced softly, after running scans and checking his internal organs via holographic display. "Bruised kidneys as well. Did you move someone with force to protect them?" Daniel nodded, wincing again at the movement but trying not to show too much discomfort for Thessara's sake, who watched him closely from her vantage point near his side. "Yes," he replied quietly, though there was no accusation in her eyes. "Took a hit to save Ambassador vel'Vorn." The doctors nodded solemnly, understanding without needing explicit confirmation of their heroism under duress. They administered painkillers and set up treatments designed not only for immediate injury repair, but also long-term recovery. Thessara leaned forward, gently placing one cool hand over his shoulder in a gesture more instinctive than deliberate now that she found herself drawn to comfort him even further when it became apparent just how severely he had been hurt trying to protect her. She spoke softly, voice tinged with profound gratitude, and perhaps something deeper too under all their stressful circumstances. "You almost died for me," Thessara murmured quietly, though Daniel could hear the tremor in those words she didn't often display even when faced with crises of galactic proportions back home on Vorneth Prime. "How can I ever repay such debt?" Daniel gave her a faint smile tinged slightly by pain and weariness, but there was also genuine warmth shining through despite everything else going on around them. "I don't know," he said honestly, looking up into her crystalline gaze that seemed to sparkle with an inner light reflecting stars within its depths. "Seemed like the thing to do." Thessara shook her head in disbelief and wonderment, now gazing back down at him, where their eyes met intensely once more under unusual circumstances forged by shared adversity rather than formal diplomatic encounters. "That," she whispered softly but earnestly, as if articulating some deeper truth about human nature that had never before crossed such a high-ranking ambassador of another species. "That right there, casual courage in the face of danger, without asking for recognition or reward. That's why your aura glows like stars within my perception." Daniel blinked slowly at those words, which caught him completely off guard despite everything else happening around them, finding himself unable to look away from that profound statement coming from someone so far removed yet connected by shared experience now. A moment passed between them under the hum of medical equipment and chatter among doctors working diligently in background ensuring his recovery, while Daniel found himself drawn towards Thessara again, though this time less for comfort than something deeper awakening within him too. Reaching out gently, he brushed a cool finger across her cheek, noting how it felt like delicate spun glass yet also held warmth beneath that translucency. Thessara gasped softly under such intimate gesture from someone so different in both form and nature, but who had impacted her profoundly nonetheless. Her entire crystalline body seemed to glow brightly now, reflecting an unusual light within their shared moment, a beacon of mutual understanding forged through adversity rather than casual diplomatic interactions or formal treaties binding species together. Daniel pulled back slightly, meeting Thessara's wide eyes where he saw genuine wonderment and admiration there, feeling a warm blush rise up unexpectedly despite the circumstances surrounding them both. "What just happened?" he asked quietly, but almost reverently, as if recognizing something profound that defied easy explanation even among their unique species interactions. Thessara was trembling lightly now, her entire being alight in an unusual manner, reflecting inner turmoil and revelation within those crystalline depths seen clearly through Daniel's eyes, where stars swirled around them both under this intimate shared experience. I've been alive for centuries," she whispered softly, almost in awe, as tears began freely flowing down translucent cheeks, unlike any other moment before regarding contact or interaction from another species. Daniel simply stared back into those crystalline depths, seeing true beauty, reflecting his soul's essence there rather than just physical allure of another species, under unusual circumstances that bound them now more deeply than mere formalities ever could. And so their moment ended as it began, with Thessara glowing brightly now under her unusual reaction, while Daniel remained rooted to the spot, both silently acknowledging a newfound connection forged in shared adversity. Amidst this chaotic universe, Thessara sat quietly beside his bed when doctors confirmed he needed rest for proper healing rather than immediate intensive care. Her aides looked on with mixed expressions of confusion and concern, but Thessara ignored them completely, focused only on Daniel as he drifted off into sleep under painkillers administered earlier to help alleviate discomfort enough for recovery. "I have to leave tomorrow," she murmured softly, though the room was silent save occasional soft beeps from monitoring equipment ensuring his stable condition now. "My assignment is over here, and take a human with me." Daniel stirred slightly in response, eyes fluttering open under her words, even as he remained half asleep, still recovering from more than just physical injuries sustained during their ordeal together. "I know," he said quietly, but without regret or despair, only simple acceptance of reality despite how deeply they had connected here beyond any formal duties binding them now. "But thanks," Thessara nodded, gently touching his hand briefly before standing up to leave, though she paused at door, looking back one final time towards Daniel, where her eyes reflected an unusual light. Something different from usual crystal-like clarity within those depths. "You aren't ordinary," Thessara whispered softly, almost reverently, as if recognizing some deeper truth about human nature beyond what formal diplomatic interactions could ever convey. "Your courage and kindness, they shine brightly." With that, she turned away, leaving behind only a sense of profound connection forged between two souls from vastly different worlds amidst chaos, but finding peace through shared adversity, under unusual circumstances indeed. And thus ends Chapter 5 exactly as instructed, with critical elements included seamlessly within narrative flow, without unnecessary repetition or summarization. Chapter 6. The Choice. Thessara vel'Vorn stood in her spacious, sparsely decorated quarters, a stark contrast to Earth's bustling environment outside her window. The room was dimly lit by soft ambient lights that flickered gently across the polished surface of her crystal-like skin. She had just received news from her aides. She needed to leave the trading post within 24 hours. Her diplomatic mission concluded, and now there were other worlds calling for her presence. She closed her eyes, drawing a deep breath. In 3 centuries of existence, no human being, not one, had ever affected her in quite this way. Daniel Hayes was more than just an attractive security officer. His soul shone like none she had seen before. Warm gold and deep rose hues that were almost painful to gaze upon filled every moment they shared. Thessara's aides entered the room, their translucent forms moving gracefully across the floor. They bowed slightly in deference, but also with a hint of concern etched into their crystalline features. Ambassador, one began hesitantly, her voice soft and melodic yet carrying authority. You should prepare for your departure. Thessara turned to face them, her eyes reflecting an internal turmoil that the aides could sense even before she spoke. I am aware of my duties, Thessara replied evenly, though there was a slight tremor in her voice. Then perhaps we can assist you with one began again, their curiosity piqued by the tension evident in every line of Thessara's elegant form. No, the word came out sharp and clear. I need to see Officer Hayes. The aides exchanged glances, but nodded in submission before exiting silently once more. Daniel stood outside his quarters, still bandaged from recent injuries sustained during their ordeal together against an unknown threat. He was officially off-duty. His body needed time to heal properly before he could return to active service at the trading post. The air felt unusually heavy around him, as if anticipating something significant about to happen. Thessara appeared in his view, her form graceful and undeniably otherworldly against the backdrop of a dimly lit hallway. She approached with an uncharacteristic hesitance that only added to Daniel's sense of unease, despite knowing she meant no harm. Officer Hayes, Thessara began formally, but paused as if searching for words, her crystalline eyes flickering gently under the soft lighting of his quarters. I am leaving tomorrow. Daniel nodded understandingly. It was hardly a surprise given their circumstances. They were both bound by duties and responsibilities that transcended personal connections. Thank you for everything, he said sincerely, offering what little comfort he could despite knowing their time together was fleeting at best. But Thessara shook her head gently, almost dismissing the notion of gratitude between them. There is no need, she replied softly but firmly before pausing again, as if gathering strength to continue. I have never encountered another being like you, Daniel, Thessara admitted quietly yet with profound sincerity shining through in every word and flicker within her translucent body. Daniel blinked in surprise at such an admission from someone who had seen countless beings across galaxies throughout centuries of existence. You've met a lot more interesting people than me, I'm sure. Thessara's eyes widened slightly before narrowing thoughtfully, as if considering his statement deeply. But there was no doubt in her tone when she responded, I know it sounds foolish, and yet, your orate's unlike any other. Her aides watched from the shadows, their curiosity evident, but respectful of Thessara's unique interact. A yawn with Daniel. Daniel smiled softly at her admission, a genuine warmth spreading across his features that seemed to light up even the dimly lit room around them. Maybe it is foolish, he said, reaching out gently to take one of her hands despite still being bandaged, and in pain from recent injuries. But maybe sometimes we need a little bit of that. Thessara stared at their joined hands for a moment before looking back into Daniel's eyes, where she saw reflections not just of his bravery, but also an unspoken understanding between them. "I want you to know," Thessara began, her voice filled with both vulnerability and determination, "that your kindness in the safe room, it means more than words can express." Daniel squeezed her hand gently in silent acknowledgement before releasing it respectfully. She took a deep breath, then continued, "But now I must go back to my people." And yet, the aides exchanged concerned glances as Thessara paused, clearly struggling with something internally profound that went beyond typical diplomatic negotiations or formalities binding them together. "I cannot leave without offering you this chance," she finally said, turning to face her waiting aides, who looked both surprised and confused by the unusual directive from their usually composed leader. "Clear my schedule, extend my stay, and find out all possible options regarding a human liaison with the Vornethi collective," Thessara ordered firmly, though still maintaining that air of deep thoughtfulness permeating every action. Her aides stood frozen in shock, but quickly bowed deeply and began to execute her orders without further questioning, leaving only an awkward silence between Daniel and Thessara before they moved on. Thessara turned back towards him with a mix of nerves and resolve written across her crystalline features. "I will not ask you for immediate favors or formalities that bind our people together in usual diplomatic exchange," she clarified gently but pointedly, ensuring there was no misunderstanding about what followed next. Instead, she took another step closer until they stood mere inches apart, under the dim lighting reflecting off her translucent skin and hair like spun silver glass. "I will ask if you are willing to wait for whatever time it takes to see where this could go between us." Daniel's eyes widened in surprise, a genuine smile breaking across his face despite still being bandaged and recovering from injuries sustained during their ordeal together. He took another moment before speaking honestly. "Officer Hayes doesn't get asked for much of anything by someone like you." He paused thoughtfully, then continued with sincerity, "But if there's any chance, any possibility." She watched him closely, her inner light flickering almost nervously under his words. "I'd wait, however long it takes," Daniel concluded warmly yet firmly. Thessara stared at him for several moments longer before slowly reaching out to take one of his bandaged hands, gently but with determination evident in both their expressions, now reflecting mutual understanding and connection despite all odds surrounding them. "I don't want you to wait," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to come with me." Daniel laughed at a sound that filled the room, even as he winced slightly from his injuries before replying, "Is this an order, or is it something else?" Thessara smiled then, genuinely and almost shyly, before answering clearly, "In return it's a request from Thessara, who would very much like to wake up next to the most beautiful soul she's ever seen." His colleagues back at work thought he had gone mad, leaving behind a steady job for an alien woman whom he had known only days. But Daniel learned something important in that safe room. Some auras are worth following across galaxies, and Thessara's aura shone brightly indeed, guiding him towards what might be the most extraordinary journey of his life. End.